Have you ever noticed how quickly we react when something doesn't go our way? Someone cuts us off in traffic, someone insults us, someone disagrees with us, and instantly, without thinking, we react. And later, we regret. How many times have we said things in anger that we wish we could take back? How many times have we hurt the ones we love simply because we reacted before we reflected? Life gives us countless moments where our reaction can either make or break the situation. The truth is, reacting instantly may satisfy our ego, but it rarely nourishes our soul. When we pause, when we think first and then respond with calmness, with wisdom, with an awareness that God is watching over us, our actions gain a new depth, a new strength, and a new beauty. Today, I want to share with you why it is so important to think first, react later. Because when our responses flow not from impulse, but from inner wisdom, we do not just protect our peace, we also elevate our relationships, our purpose, and our connection with the divine. The pause is power. Think about this in our daily lives. We are constantly placed in situations where people, circumstances, or unexpected events challenge us. Sometimes it is something as someone speaking rudely to us in a market, a driver honking impatiently behind us, or a colleague making a comment that feels like an insult. Our natural impulse, without even realizing it, is to react immediately, with anger, with frustration, with sharp words. But what happens when we pause, even for a few seconds, before reacting? That pause can completely transform the outcome of the situation. Imagine a pot of boiling water. If you pour it out immediately, it scalds and burns whatever it touches. But if you let it cool for a while, that same water can quench thirst, nourish a plant, or bring relief. Our mind, when heated with emotions, is like that boiling water. A reaction delivered in anger burns, but a response after a pause heals. The pause allows our boiling emotions to cool down, and in that cooling, wisdom enters. This is why the pause is not weakness, it is tremendous power. So often we equate power with quickness, with domination, with always having the last word. But true power is not in how fast you can react, it is in how deeply you can remain calm. The greatest leaders, the greatest thinkers, the greatest spiritual masters were not people who reacted in haste. They were people who knew the art of waiting before responding. That pause is what allowed them to access clarity, while others drowned in confusion. Let me give you a simple example from daily life. Picture yourself at home after a long, exhausting day. You're tired, maybe even irritated. Then suddenly, someone in the family says something that touches a raw nerve. Instantly, your body wants to react, to snap back, to raise your voice, to defend yourself. If you react, you may win the moment, but you lose the peace of the entire evening. But if you pause, just take a breath, hold the words for a few seconds, let the storm in your chest calm down. Then when you do respond, it will be softer, wiser, and kinder. That pause not only saves the moment, it saves relationships. There is an old saying, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and our growth. That space is the pause. And the more we cultivate it, the more we rise above being slaves to our emotions. Because let's be honest, how many times have we regretted what we said in anger? How many nights have we laid in bed thinking, I wish I hadn't said that? The pause is the cure to that regret. It gives us time to think, to reflect, and to align our response with our higher self, not with our temporary mood. The pause also connects us with God. When we stop ourselves from reacting instantly, we create a little silence within. And in that silence, the voice of the divine becomes clearer. Just like we cannot see the reflection of the moon, in a turbulent lake. We cannot feel God's guidance in a turbulent mind. But when we pause, our inner lake settles, and the reflection of divine wisdom shines through. Many times people say, I don't know what God wants me to do. But the truth is, God is always whispering, always guiding. We just need to pause enough to listen. Think of the pause as your inner shield. Life will always throw arrows at you, insults, criticism, unfair treatment, unexpected challenges. If you react instantly, those arrows pierce you deeply. But when you pause, you lift the shield of calmness, and those arrows lose their power. That shield is not built in one day, it is built every time you practice pausing instead of reacting. Slowly, you become unshakable. People may provoke you, but they cannot control you. Circumstances may test you, but they cannot break you. That is the strength of the pause. Let's also understand that the pause is not about suppressing your emotions. It is about processing them. When you pause, you are not pretending that you're not angry or upset. You are simply giving your emotions time to settle so they don't control your behavior. You are allowing yourself to breathe, to feel, and then to choose consciously how you want to act. And that choice, that conscious choice, is where your real freedom lies. Look at nature. A tree does not react instantly to every gust of wind. It stands tall, it sways, it bends, but it doesn't break. The tree has mastered the art of pausing with the storm until it passes. In the same way, if we learn to pause with life's storms, we will not break under pressure. We will bend with grace, and when the storm passes, we will still be standing strong. So the next time you feel like reacting, remember the power of the pause. Count your breaths, drink a sip of water, close your eyes for a moment, or simply smile at the situation. Remind yourself that this moment does not define you, but your response to this moment does. And in that sacred pause, ask yourself, what would my higher self do right now? What would God want me to express? The answer will always be different from what your anger or ego wanted to express. That is why the pause is power. It is the space where chaos turns into clarity, where anger turns into understanding, and where ordinary reactions transform into extraordinary responses. The pause is where the human ego steps aside and the divine soul takes over. And once you begin to master this pause, you will not just live life, you will live wisely, peacefully, and powerfully. Reactions belong to the ego, responses belong to the soul. This is one of the most profound truths of life, yet it is one that most of us forget in our daily living. When something unexpected happens, when someone disrespects us, when life doesn't go the way we had planned, our immediate reflex is to react. That reaction is often sharp, defensive, or aggressive. It comes from the ego, which constantly whispers, protect yourself. Don't let anyone win over you. Show them you are right. But if we look deeply, we see that reacting from ego rarely solves the problem. In fact, it often makes it worse. On the other hand, when we take a breath, pause, and let our response emerge from the soul, from that deeper place of wisdom and compassion, we not only maintain our dignity, but also transform the situation. Consider a simple daily example. Imagine you are driving and someone suddenly cuts across your lane recklessly. The ego immediately jumps up and says, how dare he? Show him, honk loudly, maybe shout from the window, let him know he cannot treat you this way. That is reaction, quick, fairy, born from pride. Now think about what happens if you follow through. Your anger rises, your peace is stolen, and maybe the other driver reacts too, and the situation escalates into a full-blown fight. But what if, in that moment, you let the soul guide you? The soul whispers, Maybe he is in a hurry for a reason you don't know. Maybe he is rushing someone to a hospital. Maybe he is distracted because his mind is heavy with pain. Even if none of this is true, why should you lose your calm over his behavior? If you respond from the soul, you slow down, let it go, and carry on with your peace intact. Nothing is lost, in fact, much is gained. That is the power of a soul-guided response. The ego always wants to win, the soul always wants to grow. The ego says, I must be right, I must be superior, I must prove myself. The soul says, I seek understanding, I seek harmony, I seek wisdom. When we react, we give the ego the driver's seat. When we respond, we allow the soul to take the wheel. Think of how relationships are affected by this difference. Two people in a family or friendship may love each other deeply, but the ego does not care about love, it only cares about being right. So in an argument, the ego fuels quick reactions, harsh words, accusations, judgments. Later, when the storm settles, regret sets in. The soul, however, values the relationship more than the argument. A soul-guided response is gentler, calmer, and more thoughtful. It may still express disagreement, but it does so with respect and care. That response strengthens the relationship rather than breaking it. The difference is not small, it is life-changing. People who live in ego-driven reactions are constantly restless. Their peace depends on how the world treats them. If people praise them, they feel good. If people criticize them, they feel crushed. But those who live from the soul remain steady. They are not swayed by flattery or by insult because their worth is not dependent on others' behavior. They have understood that true strength is not in shouting louder than others, but in remaining calm when others are shouting. Think about how God has created us. He has given us a mind that can think before acting, a heart that can feel compassion, and a soul that can connect to Him. When we react without thought, we are not using these gifts fully. But when we respond with awareness, we align with the purpose for which we were created, to reflect God's qualities of patience, wisdom, and love in this world. A quick reaction might make us feel powerful for a moment, but a soulful response makes us powerful for life, because it keeps us connected to something much greater than ourselves. Picture a workplace situation. Your manager criticizes your work in front of others. The ego reacts instantly. This is unfair. I have worked so hard, and he embarrasses me like this. I'll argue back, I'll prove him wrong. I'll show everyone I don't deserve this treatment. That is ego, fast, fairy, defensive. But if you let the soul guide you, your response may be, let me absorb this calmly. Let me see what truth lies in this criticism. Let me not lose my dignity by fighting in public. I will later explain myself respectfully and work on improving. The ego would have created a scene. The soul quietly creates growth. When we begin to live this way, something miraculous happens. People begin to notice. They see that you are not easily provoked, not easily shaken, not easily disturbed. They begin to respect you, not out of fear, but out of admiration. They feel your energy is different, calmer, deeper. And that is because you are no longer reacting from the shallow surface of ego, but responding from the profound depth of soul. The greatest gift of responding from the soul is inner freedom. When you react from ego, you are chained to others' behavior. Their words control you. Their actions dictate your peace. But when you respond from the soul, you are free. You choose your response consciously, and that choice reflects your higher nature, not your lower impulses. You become like a lotus flower, untouched by the muddy water around it, blooming with beauty regardless of the environment. So, whenever life pushes you into a corner, whenever people provoke you, remember this: if you react instantly, you are letting the ego take charge. But if you pause, reflect, and then respond, you are letting the soul lead. And a soul led life is always richer, calmer, and more fulfilling than an ego driven life. Emotions are guests, not masters. This is such a simple line, yet it holds a truth that can liberate us from so much unnecessary suffering. In life, emotions will always come: anger, sadness, jealousy, frustration, excitement, joy. They arrive at our hearts just like guests arrive at our homes. The problem begins when we start treating these emotions like permanent residents, giving them authority over our actions, our words, and our peace. Imagine if a guest came to your home and instead of letting them sit for a while and leave, you handed them the keys to your house and said, "Do as you please." That is what happens when we let emotions become our masters. They begin to control us, and we lose control of ourselves. Think about anger. It is one of the most common emotions that visits us. If anger were just a guest, it would come, knock on the door, make itself known, and eventually leave. But when anger becomes the master, it drives us to say words that hurt deeply, to make decisions we later regret, and to create distances in relationships that sometimes cannot be repaired. A single moment of uncontrolled anger has broken families, ended friendships, and even destroyed careers. But when we remember that anger is only a guest, we don't give it the seat of power. We acknowledge its presence. Yes, I feel angry, but we do not let it dictate our response. Now let us look at another emotion: sadness. Life does not always go the way we hope. There are losses, disappointments, and rejections that pierce the heart. Sadness walks in, sits heavily in our chest, and sometimes overstays its welcome. But even sadness is a guest. If you treat it as a master, you begin to drown in it, believing that life has no joy left. But if you treat it as a guest, you allow yourself to feel it, to sit with it, but you know it is temporary. You know it will eventually leave, making space for lighter emotions like peace, hope, and even joy. The sun does not stop rising because the night feels long, and in the same way, sadness never stays forever. Daily life gives us countless opportunities to practice this truth. Imagine you are at work and someone unfairly blames you for something. Instantly, the emotion of defensiveness and anger knocks at your door. If you let it be the master, you react with aggression, maybe shout, maybe argue, and in the end, the situation worsens. But if you remind yourself that anger is just a guest, you allow it to enter your awareness without giving it command. You think, yes, I feel this fire inside me, but I will not let it control me. Then you choose to respond calmly, either by clarifying respectfully or by staying silent until the right moment. In this way, you remain in control, not the guest. Even positive emotions can be misleading if we let them become masters. For example, excitement and passion are beautiful guests, but if they become masters, they can lead to impulsive decisions. How many times have people rushed into buying something they didn't need just because excitement overwhelmed them? How many relationships have started with passion but burned out because decisions were made without thought? The soul knows that every emotion, whether pleasant or unpleasant, is a visitor, not the ruler. When you recognize that, you can enjoy the beautiful emotions while they are present and endure the difficult ones while they pass without losing your balance. One of the most powerful daily practices is simply observing emotions like clouds in the sky. A cloud appears, floats for a while, and then drifts away. The sky itself remains untouched. Similarly, emotions pass through the mind and heart, but your true self, the soul connected to God, remains untouched. The problem is that we mistake the cloud for the sky. We think I am angry instead of realizing I am experiencing anger. That small shift changes everything. It reminds us that emotions are experiences, not identities. They are passing states, not permanent truths. Look at children. They embody this principle naturally. A child may cry intensely one moment and 5 minutes later laugh wholeheartedly as if nothing happened. Why? Because they have not yet learned to let emotions become masters. They let the guests come and go freely. Adults, however, often hold on, replaying insults in their minds, feeding anger, nurturing sadness, and clinging to jealousy until it poisons their peace. We must learn again what children already know. Emotions are temporary visitors. God has given us the wisdom to see beyond emotions. If emotions were meant to be our masters, we would have no control at all. But the gift of free will, the gift of awareness, is proof that we are not bound to obey every emotional impulse. In the pause between feeling and acting, there is the space where God's guidance can enter. When you remember this, emotions lose their control over you. Instead of being dragged by every wave, you become the sailor who knows how to steer the boat, even when the sea is stormy. Think of the strongest people you know, not physically strong, but emotionally strong. They are not the ones who never feel anger, sadness, or fear. They are the ones who feel these emotions deeply, but do not let them decide their actions. They welcome the guests, but they never hand them the throne. And this is a strength available to all of us. Every time you resist reacting out of anger, every time you let sadness pass without losing hope, every time you acknowledge jealousy but choose gratitude instead, you are proving to yourself that emotions are not your masters, you are. So the next time an emotion visits you, imagine it knocking on the door of your heart. Open the door, let it in, offer it a seat, observe it. But don't give it your keys. Don't let it rearrange your house. Know that it will leave just as every guest eventually does. And while it stays, remember that your true self, your soul, remains steady, shining, and connected to God. Emotions will come and go, but your inner strength, your divine connection, is eternal. Reactions belong to the ego, responses belong to the soul. This is one of the most profound truths of life, yet it is one that most of us forget in our daily living. When something unexpected happens, when someone disrespects us, when life doesn't go the way we had planned, our immediate reflex is to react. That reaction is often sharp, defensive, or aggressive. It comes from the ego, which constantly whispers, "Protect yourself. Don't let anyone win over you. Show them you are right." But if we look deeply, we see that reacting from ego rarely solves the problem. In fact, it often makes it worse. On the other hand, when we take a breath, pause, and let our response emerge from the soul, from that deeper place of wisdom and compassion, we not only maintain our dignity, but also transform the situation. Consider a simple daily example. Imagine you are driving, and someone suddenly cuts across your lane recklessly. The ego immediately jumps up and says, "How dare he?" Show him, honk loudly, maybe shout from the window, let him know he cannot treat you this way. That is reaction, quick, fairy, born from pride. Now think about what happens if you follow through. Your anger rises, your peace is stolen, and maybe the other driver reacts too, and the situation escalates into a full-blown fight. But what if, in that moment, you let the soul guide you? The soul whispers, maybe he is in a hurry for a reason you don't know. Maybe he is rushing someone to a hospital. Maybe he is distracted because his mind is heavy with pain. Even if none of this is true, why should you lose your calm over his behavior? If you respond from the soul, you slow down, let it go, and carry on with your peace intact. Nothing is lost, in fact, much is gained. That is the power of a soul-guided response. The ego always wants to win, the soul always wants to grow. The ego says, I must be right, I must be superior, I must prove myself. The soul says, I seek understanding, I seek harmony, I seek wisdom. When we react, we give the ego the driver's seat. When we respond, we allow the soul to take the wheel. Think of how relationships are affected by this difference. Two people in a family or friendship may love each other deeply, but the ego does not care about love,